we are once again with another Battlebots 2015 World Championship 1 review. Oh man, this has been interesting, getting to take a step back nearly 10 years ago now to get to see Battlebots when it made its grand return. There's definitely been some growing pains with the season, but I'd say it still had some great stuff, and this was another episode that looked to be exciting. The build-up is always great when it comes to the competition, and the intros are really doing a great job at just establishing that feeling heading in. Now, the first fight was between Witch Doctor and Overdrive, and right out of the gate, this definitely seemed like another one-sided matchup. Even though Witch Doctor is definitely rougher looking than what it would become, it was definitely not as refined, they still had a very solid base, and I just didn't have much hope for Overdrive heading into it. I've mentioned my problems with Overdrive before, it just didn't seem like it would stand much of a chance against Witch Doctor. Now the fight begins and Overdrive races over, easily shoving Shaman aside, who actually seems to be almost shell-shocked for a bit. I actually thought the robot had broken down at first, but no, Shaman did start moving after a bit. Still, Overdrive, while fast, seems to have no sense of direction, as it's just going all over the place, crashing into the walls, meaning that Witch Doctor is able to come in with an almighty shot, flipping Overdrive over. Shockingly, Overdrive actually can't even self-right. The lifter doesn't extend far enough, it seems. It's invertible though, so it just keeps driving around madly, as Witch Doctor keeps getting a bunch of massive shots in with that vertical spinner. And Overdrive just keeps getting worse and worse with each successive bit of damage before finally dying entirely, getting counted out as Witch Doctor moves on to the next round. Now this was a fun, if one-sided opener. I knew Overdrive had little chance heading in, but I was glad to finally get to see the early promise that Witch Doctor possessed. Again, this may be the baby steps of Battlebots, but again, we're seeing some of the big teams that will become iconic to this run. You can see that they already have like some generally pretty good fundamentals with their robots. And that makes it exciting, as eventually I'll be reviewing the other seasons, and it's going to be so fun to watch them evolve. Next up was Tombstone versus Radioactive, and it's another fight we knew was going to be one-sided. Radioactive didn't even do a whole lot against a horizontal spinner that wasn't even working correctly, so this seemed like it was, well, this was already a foregone conclusion when they had to go up against one of the most dangerous horizontal spinners in Tombstone. Now, I've been mostly skipping the between rounds bit that they've been doing in the episodes as they head into the second round, but they do such a good job at setting up Tombstone as their first big villain of the reboot. Also, damn, the stats difference. They really are not leaving it up to interpretation. Like, they want to let you know right out of the gate, Radioactive has no chance here. In fact, the entire time, Chris and Kenny are basically like, lol, Radioactive stands no chance. Like, wow guys, I know you're right, but you gave Overdrive more shine, and that was basically a steep wedge on bike wheels. Now the fight begins, and Tombstone doesn't spin up at first, driving around with the weapon staying stationary to almost toy with Radioactive. They soon then get spinning, and the weapon quickly gets to a crazy speed and makes quick work of Radioactive. Batteries and shrapnel go everywhere, and the robot keeps trying to drive for a while, but Tombstone just keeps going in, absolutely battering them. By the time the countout is over, you can see that Radioactive is slightly twisted and warped from the damage. With light armor, it really didn't stand much of a chance. Still, the teams both had fun, and I'll admit, watching Tombstone go crazy on an opponent is a lot of fun to see. That incredibly powerful weapon combined against an opponent with light armor, it's just a perfect match made in heaven. There's a reason why so many people loved watching Tombstone go, and it was because of fights like this. After that, we got the rematch of Lockjaw versus Overhaul. And while I did find it confusing why we were getting the rematch immediately, I do kind of understand, as it is intriguing with the controversy from the previous round that it'd be interesting to see if Lockjaw made it clear that they were the better robot this season by winning the rematch, or if Overhaul could get their redemption and the last laugh, especially as they made some tweaks, making it so that they'd be even faster when attacking. it was definitely the most anticipated fight of the round in my opinion. Obviously, there were robots that were specifically like entertaining, but from a story perspective, this one had a lot of drama heading in that made it quite intriguing. Plus, both robots are generally pretty good, even in this early 2015 season, so you knew you were going to get a pretty decent fight heading in. Now the fight began and both robots met straight on, but were at a stalemate as neither could really do much on each other. So they back away, and Overhaul then gets back in, clamping down onto one of Lockjaw's tyres, piercing right through and having a solid grip on them. As Lockjaw starts struggling, they're trying to get under, their lifter is in an awkward position, and soon enough, they actually begin smoking. Overhaul soon goes in for more, and Lockjaw's lifter motors seem to have completely given up before a flame bursts out from Lockjaw. Now at first, I thought that this flame was like a sign of the damage that Lockjaw had taken, but Chris and Kenny seem to imply that the flamethrower was actually a part of Lockjaw's design, like that was one of their weapons. Which, if it is, then, because I think they mentioned that it didn't work the previous round, which if it is, then my god, this is the most complex robot in the entire season. 6-wheel drive, a grabber/lifter motor, and flamethrower? Like, my goodness, Donald, you put everything in this robot. Still, the flame is all they're able to do, as Lockjaw is being suffocated by Overhaul. And so all they can do is just keep bursting, burst that flamethrower once or twice more as Overhaul just keeps on them. Lockjaw is eventually counted out, but in my opinion, adding to the controversy, Overhaul doesn't back up. Like, they don't seem to have much of a grip on Lockjaw anymore, if any at all. But I don't know how I feel about this. Now, I'll concede, Lockjaw probably was already done, so I don't think it would have made much of a difference, so this is me splitting hairs. This is me nitpicking, as I think the match was already over, but I feel like you should back up when a count-out is happening. Like, you can be close, but Overhaul was still touching Lockjaw, and I don't know how I feel about that. Because, like, there's a chance that there might have been still a little life in Lockjaw, but it's hard to say. Lockjaw, I do think, was probably soundly out at that point, but still, I would have liked it if Overhaul backed up. Again, I'm splitting hairs. I don't want anyone to think that I'm making this a huge deal. This is literally just me being like, I wish they'd backed up a bit. Still, it was a very fun fight. It was great to see them having a great rematch. Overhaul did very well in that one, and it was a fun, if more one-sided encounter. Overhaul definitely got to really show themselves off. It was a fun time all around. I am struggling to find a negative to say about the match. These two have had two of the best matches of the entire season. So I've got to give both teams massive kudos. They did especially well in this. They were a lot of fun. And then we move on to the main event of the evening between Bite Force and Hypershock. Two Battlebots modern day icons duking it out. They do mention that Hypershock's reliability was a major concern for the team, as, they seemed to have some parts burn out. They were trying to put in some more reliable parts that took up more space, so that they'd have more of a chance against the almighty Bite Force. So there was the ultimate question of, would Hypershock be able to hang in there long enough to actually be able to deal some major damage to Bite Force? The fight begins, and Bite Force immediately comes racing out, and you can already see some problems on Hypershock's side, as at first there's no signs of life from the spinner, and their forks are moving to the side? Now, I'm going to be honest, I do not know if this was part of the design, if they're designed to move to the side, kind of like, I don't know. Like, it's either incredibly flimsy and easily bending to the side, or it's just a very strange design. I'm not sure what the intention was there. Either way, Bite Force is able to easily overwhelm them at first, pushing Hypershock around. Eventually though, Hypershock does start to get that spinner up to speed, and you can hear one hell of a wail coming from that spinner. It sounds so cool. Like, we haven't really got to hear too many great death hums in this season. I think this is like the first really good one. And they soon send Bite Force up into the air, flipping them over and into the screws. Like, they are doing some nice damage. Though, unfortunately, the spinner soon gives up again not long after. We see a little bit of life from it. It reminds me of Pulsar, how, you know, it keeps coming back to life and dying, and coming back to life and dying. Except it's a little bit worse here, as when Bite Force wedges them and brings that clamp down and begin pushing Hypershock around, smoke begins to rise from Hypershock, as Hypershock soon completely breaks down. Will calls for Paul to flip them over, you know, get one last little bit in, you know, because I imagine, like, Will just didn't want to die like this, in this kind of almost pathetic way, given how cool the robot is. I can totally understand that. You know, you don't want your fights to end just because your robot burnt out. And Paul does try a little, but they eventually do give up as Hypershock gets counted out. And honestly, while not a great fight, it was still fun. There was some questionable stuff in the fight where the robots seemed to struggle a little bit to really, like, go all out. They did show some great moments in that fight. You know, the great spinner potential from Hypershock, the great control from Bite Force with that great driving from Paul Ventimiglia. You can tell both teams have something special in the works with their respective robots that will only further develop as time goes on. So if you're a massive fan of these teams, I definitely recommend checking the episode for this fight, because while it's definitely not anything too crazy, it's a great way to just see the evolution of Bite Force and Hypershock, in my opinion. And overall, I'd say this was a pretty good episode. Now, I wouldn't say there was a fight I'd consider special in this one. That's probably my biggest, like, downside to it. You know, the first Overhaul versus Lockjaw fight I'd still consider better. You know, there's like Bite Force versus Hypershock. While it was fun, it didn't really have anything crazy. Tombstone versus Radioactive is really only going to be like a recommendation if you're a massive Tombstone fan. None of them are truly special fights, however. But at the same time, no fights ever get as low as, say, Warrior versus Ghost Raptor. There's a much more consistent level of quality here. So I'd still recommend it. I think I'd recommend it more than episode 3 even. So I definitely think you should check this one out. There's some pretty decent fights in there. Nothing special, but there's still some fun to be had nonetheless. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this episode review. If you did, please be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and be sure to hit that notification bell to be notified of future videos on the channel. Comment down below what you thought of this episode. Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Let me know. I'd love to hear what your favourite match was, or, you know, just tell me some way that you felt differently about the episode. Share the video around with your friends because it'd be great to get more eyes on the channel. And if you want to, you can become a member for a small fee. You get access to custom emotes, bonus reviews, members exclusive Robot Arena 2 challenges, and more perhaps in the future. You don't have to. Any support you give, even if it's just a like on the video, is massively, massively appreciated. And I hope to see you all next time. Bye, guys!